the February 21st, 22nd, sorry. I did it wrong. Special meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors is hereby called to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mitchell,
Present.
Vice President Herman,
Present.
Director Leeson,
Present.
Director Adkins,
Present.
Director Oblinsky.
Present.
Now for the adoption of the agenda, Dr. Saltzman, would you like to introduce the agenda?
Yes, tonight, our agenda, Madam Chair, strategic initiatives updates to the board led by Pete Meiser and his team. And there were no changes to the agenda this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So this is our work study session number 2, strategic initiatives update. Dr. Meisner, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good evening, President Mitchell, directors, Dr. Saltzman, and public. I am very excited to launch our second board study session to provide updates on our strategic initiatives this year. And I would just really like to start out with some positives, some points of pride. We have so much to be proud of with our strategic plan, how it centers student achievement, how it looks after students, staff, and families as a community, and a very collaborative approach. One of the things that distinguishes a strategic initiative, any initiative or work scope and a strategic initiative is that we have to work together. And often we have to work in ways that we haven't worked before, and we have to work across departments. And so just a key ingredient when you hear our initiative updates is that collaborative approach. It's something that our superintendent organizes for, sponsors, encourages. When we work in those ways, we get different outcomes, different results for our students at that strategic level, not only impacts our community. And I think with these two initiatives tonight, I just want you to listen for that collaborative approach. Some of these things, these initiatives are about organizing our work and our collaboration and resources and tools so that it gets to schools. Just wanted to start off with that point of pride and that empowerment and that collaboration. I think it's key to the initiatives that are here tonight. All right, so tonight we have 2 updates. Each update is designed to be about 30 minutes. You will hear the common milestones and things that we always provide, and it's meant to be interactive, and we'll have discussion. And you'll hear grounding to priority student outcomes. Okay. So I'm going to take a little opportunity to provide an overview of these initiatives before our initiative owners take it deeper. So our first update continues our ongoing investments with positive behavior interventions and supports and multi-tiered systems of supports. So that's, you often hear PBIS or MTSS. This is an ongoing investment we have with these resources to support our schools. You'll hear our updates for our current work in those areas. At one point, these 2 initiatives are now coupled together. Previously, they were working more on their own, including even some initiatives around social emotional learning. These have now built upon each other, and we are integrating our NPSS and our PBIS initiatives with why. Well, as we go towards schools and to share these resources and to empower them to lead their work at the local level, it's absolutely critical that we are providing coherence and clarity. So when we work as initiative teams with these 2 initiatives in mind, then we are going to create things that are more coherent, and schools will benefit from that with their implementation. So that's, you'll hear about what those work scopes are and a lot of the resources and tools that we're providing for schools to use. And as the board has asked for regular data updates, you will hear some data snapshots that are related to these initiatives that update the board with some student achievement and other forms of data and help to illustrate the initial impacts of these initiatives. That's a quick overview of our first update tonight. And that will be provided by Mimi Brown. Still here. Our second update tonight is going to be provided by Callum Spear, and that is defining the essential practices and structures that support student success and will be held in common across the district. This lives inside our strategic theme around innovation, consistency, and accountability. It has a lot to do with how we go about improving and engaging others with these initiatives. So you'll be hearing about that. And I want to point out that this is a new initiative this year. It's just launched. So you'll really be learning about where this team is taking it with their direction and goals, some initial work. And you'll also be hearing some data snapshots that are attached to some of the initiative work that's already been done this year with that team to help make those connections more clear. Great, so that's the overview. We will continue to provide similar protocol and routine as we have in the past to hear about the big idea why, how we are engaging stakeholders, milestones and timelines, some country versus deliverables. Absolutely, our celebrations, examples, recent work, performance measures, next steps, and then question and discussion, which is critical to the study session performance. Okay, so as I invite Mimi to come up to get us started, we are excited. We're really prepared on this beautiful day. We're going to bring the energy and we invite you to bring it too. We want to take advantage of the study session format, so please feel free to interact. That's by design, so we'll bring it forward. Welcome, Mimi Brown.
Thank you. Greetings, board, Dr. Schultzman. It's an honor to be here and I'm excited to share our initiative work. So to start us off, you've already heard a bit about positive behavior intervention systems, or PBIS, you'll hear referred to that way as well. Our executive sponsor is Dr. Peter Scott. You'll see a lot of things on here about every school integrating social emotional learning. We want each student to feel safe and engaged and socially identified. And you'll also notice it is green. The work is on track for this year as well. Now with PBIS, you'll see in a graphic shortly that it really nests under multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS. Again, our sponsor is Dr. Peter Scott, and we want to shape and fully implement a comprehensive MTSS system for our district. This is currently going on in all of our schools, and you'll see that, and we want to shape and support what we're currently doing and build the capacity and make sure we're meeting the needs of every learner in our system. So we're excited to show you this graphic. It's hot off the press, and it's what I just mentioned, that PBIS, or the behavioral and social emotional supports, are nested under that MTSS umbrella. We have a multi-tiered system that includes academic, social emotional, and behavioral learning. You have a pyramid right by your name tag or somewhere near there. And you'll notice on each side of that, you will find academics, behavior, and social emotional. It's not a flat pyramid. It is really a pyramid that stands out and we try to wrap around the whole child. You'll also notice here that we have these pillars that help drive that work, and they align to OSPI and national standards as well. I'll give you a moment to read the quote and you'll see how that aligns to what I just shared. Ready to dig in? All right. So you probably recognize this graphic from last year, if you were here at that time, but we're going to review it as well. Tier 1 in the green, for instruction. In the yellow, Tier 2, someone might need some intervention toward a goal. In the red, Tier 3, intensive intervention. So thinking about it in a medical term. So it's recommended, it's best practice to go walk every day. It's something everyone hopefully can access, and having your annual checkup, something that we want everyone, Tier 1, a common thing that we all engage in, have access to. Now, you need a little bit more help. Maybe they say the cholesterol is a little high. You might need more frequent checkups. You might have something more prescribed than just general walking that you might read in a journal. You might have specifically prescribed exercise, a specific prescribed diet. And if you needed intensive intervention, there might be medication, there might be surgery. So you'll notice the pyramid also gets smaller because less people often need the intervention. There's some other things that's fluid, but we're going to talk about that in just a moment. To get your brains thinking about this, you have a placemat in front of you. And you have an envelope, and everyone can participate, everyone has the resources, you have some cards related to skiing. So put yourself in the mindset that downhill skiing is new to you. You want to sort the cards, these are different supports you might have. Would you place them on green? They are tier 1 for access for everybody. Would you place them maybe on tier 2, a little bit of intervention, or tier 3, a lot of intervention? I'll give you a couple minutes to think about it. Feel free to chat with the neighbor. Thank you, sir. So everyone's thought about it. You also have something else. If you open up your Toblerone, you'll notice there are 3 sections, just like the 3 tiers. So to keep the party going. It's a sunny day. You need some energy during this time. Have a little chocolate and remind you of the 3 tiers. All right. Does anybody want to share where they put an item? What was anyone thinking?
I just know where I have a problem putting an item.
Oh, tell us that.
Well, because I sort of put, sorry, the boots and equipment for all, ski pass, the handbook is sort of tier 1. Tier 2 may be longer lessons or small group, tier 2, and then tier 3, one-on-one or an instructor, but then really a partner. I struggled with, because a partner could be everybody, you could have a partner, but then a partner can also be a tier 2 intervention where somebody maybe gets, like, maybe just a coach. But so I want to see how everybody else came out.
What are your guys' thoughts? I saw some head nods. You got agreement. Any thoughts on the partner to ski with?
I think it's tier 2,
Yeah?
although I'm kind of nervous with this activity because I was a ski instructor. I did it, right? It's been a while.
Of course. And the nice thing is this is fluid. So right or wrong, we're trying to do supports. And I'll show you, do you guys have any thoughts that you wanted to share in relationship to this? Well, let me unveil some thinking then. And hopefully you feel validated. So we have our skier. When we want to have tier 1 instruction, we want access. So the ski pass provides access to the slopes, definitely tier 1. Boots, skis, and equipment, again, gives access to anyone at that tier 1 level. Small group lessons. So if I were to compare this to a classroom, small group can be part of tier 1 in any classroom to give you some pre-teaching, some re-teaching. And I know when I took ski lessons in junior high, everyone had to have a small group ski lesson to be able to participate. It took attendance, you had to show up. So that resonated for me on ski. But definitely a handbook of basics and safety is taught. That again is tier 1, everyone has access. So this is where I placed a partner to ski with me. A little bit more intervention, I need a little bit more help. So that's why I thought about placing it there. But I could probably make an argument that that's fluid. So something that we also think about when someone needs more intervention is, do we need to increase the intensity, the frequency of help, or the duration? So maybe you need more ski lessons, not just once a week, but twice a week. Or maybe instead of a half hour, you need longer, an hour. And then one-on-one lessons, definitely the highest need, more intensive. Or an instructor will ski with me all day to make sure I'm safe and can learn. That would be my highest level and intensity as well. So something I just mentioned to remember are the tiers are fluid. As you encounter more complex hills, maybe a black diamond or a harder skill or a core, common core standard, you would flex between the levels. You would always get tier one core access, and you might also have some intervention. But once you master that, you might come down and just need the tier one. That makes sense? Awesome.
I have a question though.
Absolutely.
So if we noticed, like, because I had sort of small group and partner reversed. But if we notice that maybe that partner or having like a reading buddy, like we do in some elementary schools, having that partner is actually should be standard practice.
Yep.
Then it can, like you said, fluid, but maybe it just moves down into tier one without question.
That was an excellent explanation.
Okay. And then maybe something comes out of tier one because actually we find out it is more complicated.
Or maybe
it's a
going
higher
in on a skill,
Okay,
more concentrated time, or if you have longer time on someone that might be a peer model for that.
Okay.
So you were thinking about the purpose, we would think about it in the exact same way.
thank you.
Yeah. So we're taking the same diagram and now we're putting on the lens or the hat that we want to think about how teams at schools work through this. So a lot of our teams there's data meetings at schools. Looking at tier one, what are we doing for our core? Is it working? Do we need to do more? You can see that in grade level or content level, PLCs. And then once we start to zoom in on students that might need more again, in duration, intensity, or frequency of help, that's when we're having tier two meetings and narrowing in or drilling down, and even more so in tier three. And to summarize that, we would discuss data, instruction, and support, and you'll notice there's a little calendar, it's time bound. So how long do we want to try this for? Do we want to try this for 4 weeks? And we'll be doing progress monitoring that and decide, do we want to continue this, intensify it, or do we need to switch, or do we come back down to 4? So we're always measuring those things.
I have a question on that background. As it goes, are more, and different types of, people typically involved?
Yes. You teed me up for the next part. That was perfect. I love it. Thank you. You did it so long for that. All right. So tier one, here is a snapshot of one of our schools. All of our schools have MTSS teams who are working through this. I want to just give you a snapshot of one school, Woodside. So there, if you had a tier one question, you're working with all of your students, and you might ask yourself, I just need a think partner through this. On their staff website, you go to this form, they fill it out, and it goes to their instructional coaches who become your think partner. Let's think through what you might need for a group of students or all your students because you feel like you just want a think partner. I don't even want to use the word stuck, you know? So that's tier one. Tier two, now you've worked with someone and you want more heads to think about it, as you just pointed out. So now you're going to take it to a tier two team. At this level, the elementary level, you might have your principal on the team, you might have the counselor on that team, maybe the instructional coach, maybe another teacher. Teams are comprised differently depending on the staffing at the school. But you would fill out a new form and it would ask you more elaboration. What did you try? For how long? How did it work? And you'd come with more specific data to look at what are possible interventions we could put in. That's an example. Did that kind of hit what you were thinking? Our teams were working together. And then if we drill down further, let's take this to a tier two level, the yellow middle band. And we're going to look at one student. Let's call him Jay. He's a 4th grader. He receives multilingual services. And thinking of your triangle again, we're going to look at the whole child, his academics, his behavior, his social emotional learning. This is from our Panorama Student Success platform. So looking at Jay, his academics are in the yellow. Attendance, behavior, and SEL by our PET scores are in the green. We're doing okay. So what we need to drill down in? Academics. So we go to another screen in Panorama, and it shows the iReady diagnostic. You see kind of a caterpillar plot graph there. So this is data is all the way from 2019 to current. And the student was struggling. And I know from looking at this, I showed you one intervention I'm going to talk about in a moment. They had multiple interventions that showed progress. Where you see it going from green, we hit standard, and that was in June, we dipped down to red. So we had a bit of a summer slide. So we need to think about what can we put into place for the student. One intervention they put in was from phonics, and they were talking about syllable types. They put it in for 8 weeks, the top row,
And then you see these circles, that's where they stopped and they progress monitored, they pulled some data to see how it was going. So we're making progress, went from 19 out of however many it was, and 20 still in the red. We're hoping for more, intensify it. We're getting really close by week 7, and on week 8, we're in the green. The progress monitoring data shows they met the objective. And then it would be part of that plot line and show that they're increasing in their knowledge of that skill. And what's really great about this is you can see the overall improvement over time. We don't need to try to go to tier 3 yet. We know what we're doing is working. We either need to intensify it, lengthen it, or increase the frequency. Any questions about that data? Yeah,
Were you saying, is this an actual student named Hinder, or is this a theoretical?
this is an actual student that we changed the name. So it's a student from one side we pulled. Which you guys are amazing at this. You did set me up for the next step. Oh, go ahead.
Just quickly, because I'm taking a little different, take maybe on Caroline's or question about people.
Mhm.
So with this, is this the classroom teacher doing all this work, or is there a para or somebody else also helping?
Sure, it's a great question. Depends on the staffing of the school and the scheduling and what your think partners in that MTSS team. So we drilled down to the data and looked at what they needed, and then we determined they needed orphonics. So they might need more. There's a lot of routines in orphonics. And so instead of just doing it once a week, introduced with a group, we might pull them into a small group and do it 3 or 4 times a week. That might be the teacher, and that's ideal. It also could be a para-educator, depending on the data in that classroom and how many groups are comprised and how many adults they need to meet the kids in that classroom.
And then with our one-on-one, how do the families get engaged?
Oh, definitely. Through this whole process, one of the questions on that form I showed you is, have you reached out to the families to start to partner with? What are their assets? What works well for them? And be partners throughout the whole process. Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you. What's really neat to see is over time, the student got to master. So he's starting with syllables, but you see, you don't give up, you still do the interventions, and that's where duration means proficiency at the same time. So what's really good to see on this student, this isn't a real student, but over a 6 to 8 week period, they've mastered that concept. Okay, and that's something that we want to continue doing for our students, right? Just have to have a little bit of time to master that.
And as well, this was a multilingual learner, so there's other concepts that they're layering on to that one skill that bring times of money. Absolutely. So, as I just mentioned, our student Jay is a multilingual learner, not just looking at one student, but the tier 1 team often looks at a subgroup for the whole school. So this is data that Woodside would look at to notice our work for our English language learners is working on the SBA. You see an upward trajectory there in ELA and in math. And as I mentioned, it's the whole child, so this is an academic piece of data to look at a subgroup. You also have their regular attendance. So this slide was intentionally shown to show you that these 2 bars, where they were really high in their attendance for this subgroup, was pre-COVID. So as a team, looking at their data over the school, we really want to do something about this because it's dropped post-COVID. And you can see their efforts are working. I know this is like grades from 60 to 72. So the interventions they're putting into place are showing me. One more school to give you another snapshot. As I mentioned, all of our schools are doing this. So to show you a secondary snapshot, this is Cascade High School. This is an example of the newsletter that they put out to talk about there was data in this that showed their gains. It also reminded them of their staff commitment toward attendance and school-wide expectations, they acknowledge both the staff and the students for meeting their expectations. Staff can nominate students and students can nominate staff as well. They have grade level assemblies. I'm going to highlight one of those in just a moment. And they have interventions for subgroups that they call the Pause Academy. So the subgroup, this is the Pause Academy. And I actually, to tell their story well, I have lots of data typed up ready to share with you. They set 3-month goals, and students that are not meeting that, they bring them into the Pause Academy and set checkpoints. So right here, it says assignment 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's depending on what they need to possibly turn in to increase their grade and get. A lot of them, as I'm going to share with you, is the freshman class. We're looking to improve how many students were passing, not getting an F. So these are students that came in for an intervention. They also could be toward attendance, so they would have different categories, not just assignment, to try to help them increase their attendance. What do they need to, what barriers do they need to overcome? There were notes sent home. They definitely collaborated and called the families to see how they could partner together. They did a lot of things for an intervention for that subgroup that needed help with that. This is an example of that 9th grade class, looking at the students passing all of their courses. It's increasing over time. And they even said their source was insight. In 9 years, this is their lowest fail rate year. So they're seeing improvement with concentrated efforts. They had freshman assembly, and they first started this year talking about attendance. And the freshmen set a goal for how they wanted to do their attendance. They did that for 3 months. In the next 3-month band, actually starting with October, they overlapped. They wanted to have an 84% passing all classes, all freshmen passing at 84%. Excuse me, let me say that better. 84% of them passing their classes. So you're going to notice at the assemblies, they shared the data with the students. They started at 74%. They dipped down to 68%. So that was a motivator for them. They talked about what they wanted to earn when they hit their target. In December, they were approaching their goal at 79%. And in January, at the actual day that the term ended, they hit 84%. And just, you have to know what they earned, right? They wanted, the whole grade chose the wrestling coach will dance ballet for 84 seconds, matches their goal. And the security guard will let them hide him, and he promised an extra surprise reward. So it's very motivating. And like I said, students that needed extra help with that subgroup for the Pause Academy.
Well, yes, sorry, since this was done at an assembly. So,
They have monthly assemblies.
so then I know that, one of the colleges my daughter interviewed or looked at years ago, they talked about this whole culture of making sure everybody passes. So do you know if the staff saw that, like peer-to-peer coaching, peer-to-peer support happening in classrooms to really encourage their peers to knuckle down? Or
That's an amazing
or
question.
help with the subject?
Absolutely. I think I would have to follow up and ask them specifically to answer that accurately.
Because it'd be interesting to see what did the culture change in the classroom, because when we were doing the IRs at Tambark, there was a young man that was definitely well ahead of his class and was sort of the helper and going around and just helping kids with their concepts. And so it'd be interesting to see how did that classroom behavior change with kids stepping up.
And I know there was a high-level conversation between the folks that were helping and giving that one-on-one support, checking in weekly, and communication with the different teachers of specific students.
Yeah.
So I know communication side would be interesting to know what it looked like in the classroom as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. So we just showed you a couple snapshots of schools. One of the ways we got this information was we went to each site, this would be the members of the initiative team, and we interviewed each school. We asked them questions as to their MTSS process, their PBIS process, and how they were implementing those, the tools and resources they were currently utilizing and what they still need, and then their next steps. That gave us a baseline for the whole school district and how we can do our best work to support them as an initiative team. So you can see that's checked off. 2 areas that we're still going to come to are feedback sessions on resources that we're developing right now. So we'll get feedback from schools, how we're doing and if it will match their need, and an annual implementation reflection for each site. This is just a bar graph of one of the questions that we asked on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. How would you rank the usefulness of the current MTSS tools you have? Now, if you added these up, it doesn't add up to every school because some people just wanted to narratively tell us what they used. They couldn't quite give it a number. But of the schools that gave it a number, you can see many of the tools were helpful, but they gave us amazing feedback. That gave us information of what we need to develop and do better. So we're excited to use that information. Some milestones. You just saw that we had stakeholder feedback. 2 years ago, we got that via survey, and this year we were excited we got that in person. Our initiative team is working on a handbook. So the resources flow charts to understand what teams do when they meet, the roles that they have, sample agendas, things that will help the teams move forward. We're developing that, and we will get feedback from schools on that and roll that out. We have a district MTSS team that's comprised of Dr. Scott, Dr. Bogan, myself, other members that make sure we can provide guidance and advocacy. So again, we have clarity and coherence as a whole system. Cross-department training. So that's up here at the CRC that our departments, when we're called to give support or answer a question, that we have coherence and collaboration among each other, that we can be a rich resource together as a unified support. We're also going to disseminate that handbook that I just referenced. And another resource that I'm excited to tell you in just a moment. So some celebration, an example of our site interview at one of our schools and our cross-department training. We also do that with buildings as well to start to calibrate our work and share promising practices. This is our initiative team working on the handbook, and this is hot off the presses, the cover of our handbook that is in development. So one of the opportunities I was excited to share with you is when we went out to each school, we realized, which wasn't surprising to us, but we saw in practice that everyone has a different context, whether you be elementary, middle school, high school, and so you have different resources available to you. The resources we're developing in the handbook have to have on-ramps so everyone can see themselves utilizing them and having examples that would work for their context. So we see that as an opportunity, and one of the suggestions that was given to us by several schools is they have a location to share promising practices. So an agenda at elementary might look different than an agenda at middle school or high school. So we have a Canvas page we started, and we're going to have a section for that as well, so they can see examples from their colleagues and peers at other schools. One of the tools we're creating, that last piece of stakeholder feedback, is for buildings to reflect on where they're at, whether something's in place, partially in place, or in place, so they can set annual goals. A school that I know, we did a benchmark of implementation where we're refining this right now. That's what it was called last year. Evergreen Middle School met and looked at what they wanted to target. They met this summer. They put amazing things in place in their PBIS system, and they have wonderful data to show how those measures have impacted their student growth. And they have assemblies for their students as well that they put that data. Our next steps. You heard about our handbook, getting feedback on that, having our cross-departmental training, and disseminating that handbook and supports. And of course, we want to get all of our kids through graduation and prepared for college and career readiness, and that is our end goal for MTSS and PBI. Any questions?
Oh, this is, I thought, a great way to present it. And since I work in healthcare, I was actually talking to Jared earlier about lipids. So, sorry, Jared. It was a nice conversation. Any questions or comments?
Talk a little bit more about, so this is really the beginning stages of rolling this out for all the schools. So numbers wise, so Woodside was just such a great example with that one student. And it starts one student at a time, right? Identifying student. So as far as numbers go, it's sort of still too early to tell, right? As far as getting.
Are you talking numbers of schools that have MTSS
I
systems?
was thinking number of students in each school that are entered in for additional tier 2, tier 3. That's still coming, isn't it? Really?
Probably to quantify it in that way, there are schools that could do that because they've been working on it a while. So I think every school could tell you the number of students they've talked about that have been referred, depending on the referral process and where they're at in that system and where they've gotten help. Now, I showed you that we have different ways that teams meet. If you're at your team, your PLC level, that might be gathered by a grade level or a content team, and they're holding that data. Does that make sense? That's turned in. So you have different teams looking at different parts, so the data I could pull from different sources.
Okay.
Depending on who's the team that's meeting. But I like what you're saying, and we can look for that now that you.
I was reading something that the sort of the model is about an 80% tier one and 20 tier two incorporating tier three.
That's the goal.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I've heard these two acronyms for quite a few years.
Yeah.
So we have implemented.
Yeah.
And so share with me, I guess I'm feeling like this presentation was about implementation almost. And how is it different from what we've been doing to what you're now doing, I guess?
I would say it's refinement.
Okay,
So we're working with the systems we have in place and what common things can we support to elevate what's already there.
how many years have we been working on?
Always such as Dr. Scott and.
I would say, I would say about 3 years in earnest on the system. I think you asked a good question. We actually spent a lot of time talking about those verbs in the initiative, shape, enhance, and that's, I think you just answered those terms. This is about refinement. Every school has a system. It's about how well is it working? Are you in that cycle of continuous improvement, looking at where you have hiccups or wrinkles in your process and just ironing those out. That's, it's like two fluid examples, but there are others that are further away from that development.
And Larry, you rolled out the pyramid model how many years ago?
We were in the middle of implementing the system in 2019 pandemic.
Yeah.
And that is what the setback. So Dr. Scott shared the last 3 years have really been in earnest because I don't think we were having to focus on for a couple of years there.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess I just have a question too about, like, just as we're looking at the refining of things, that referral process that Woodside has, I'm guessing it probably took a while to sort of get to a place like that, so that it wasn't just the hallway conversation with the coach, the hallway conversation with the principal. You had a record so that the principal can then look back and the coaches and everybody else can look back and say, like, what really are we doing here? And so is that, like, those sort of referrals, the assemblies, sort of those things are newer?
I would agree with that, yes. Woodside and other schools have been refining their practice for several years. And so you would start with the referral document that I just showed you, and they would tweak it based on teacher feedback, and coming to the team. It was helpful to have this data. We need more of this. So they would add a question. So it's a fluid process, and I would say it's an alive document. That's why we asked what was working for them, because we want to help build on what's already there. I think we'll be doing that for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thanks for that interactivity and engagement, that's what we want. I'll add on just 2 anecdotes with some of those questions and thinking. One of the areas of development that we've seen across schools is the specificity in terms of which tier students need. For example, there's often tier 1, and then there was often a lot of development and capacity around tier 3. Strengthening the middle in terms of what do we do when we know something needs more, so that it's not always something really, really big. And then what is that, under what context, who does it, getting the tools prepared, I think has been a big part of the recent work that we've done. Another kind of commentary with the strategic plan is we went deep with social emotional learning. We went, as its own initiative, we went deep with PBIS, positive behavioral interventions and support, as its own initiative. We have another one related to it around academics. So I think we needed to do that deep work to build out what each of those things are and how they work, just the tools. And now what we're doing is building that coherence. And we have been working with schools all along, but now you're going to see coherence, more coherent systems. I just want to applaud Mimi and her team for visiting each school and engaging leaders and teams to hear where they are, what their strengths are, what their next levels of work are, and being a thought partner and resource provider. And that's new. That level of like school specific support, again, that empowerment I think is, where we're at, and that's the ongoing work. So, two little comments that I wanted to provide. This is so related. I mean, this next initiative, around defining essential practices and structures, when we think of MTSS, PBIS, social emotional learning, it's huge. In some ways, it kind of organizes the complexity of the school so that we can do it better. And you can see the opportunities and challenges that we have for implementation. So it's a nice lead into this next initiative, when we're gonna be thinking about how do we define this essential practices and structures? How are we defining what's common, and support it, define accountability, and also layers for innovation. And so there's a nuance there too. So great opportunity to connect what we were learning and engaging with from PSS and favorite supports and the implementation and improvement science. So with that, I will invite Kelly Spear.
I just have a few things to tackle. I will have that, I just have to get rid of these things in my hand first.
Okay. Sure, you think it's really question?
I do my office.
You know, like 20 years old.
I don't know if you heard, but Dr. Saltzman asked me for a lavender highlighter. This has nothing to do with our initiative, but I do love the color purple. And one of my friends, when I was a teacher, when I think I turned 26, she was our department head. She wouldn't let me buy purple pens because she thought that was an inappropriate use of money. So she bought me 26 purple pens for my 26th birthday. And I still have some of them, so I do have a lavender highlighter in my office. She was a great friend, so, yeah. But that is not why I'm here tonight. My name is Kelly Spear, I'm the Director of Secondary Instruction, and I'm here to talk to you about this new strategic initiative. It wasn't really developed, it's just newly rolling out this year. The past few years I've been working on the instructional framework, so this is new for me too, so this is exciting. This strategic initiative, like Pete or Dr. Messer was talking about, is finding essential practices and structures. And you're gonna see a lot of connections between the work that Mimi and her team with the idea of coherence. So once we build the foundation, how do we build the structures and define those to ensure that our schools are doing similar things with the opportunity for innovation across our system. So exciting to get a new theme outside of instruction. All right. So if you're like me, you might be wondering, what is this? What does this actually mean? What work are you doing? So we're actually going to start with an activity where you're going to do a little bit of a close read. This is an instructional strategy. I was an English teacher. Actually, maybe I am an English teacher still have my certificate. So I'm going to ask you to do one, just read without your highlighter, and just read what D1A, so what the brief description and ideas for implementation is. So that one paragraph. Go ahead and take 30 seconds to read that, and then I'm going to ask you to come back to it. Okay, when you're done, I'm going to ask you to do a second read, and this time I'm going to ask you to pick up your highlighter. And with the highlighter, I want you to highlight words that you think are important. I'm not going to say like nouns or verbs, but really any words that you think would help us solve, what does this initiative actually mean? So take another 30 seconds.
when you're done highlighting, don't worry if you're not, would you just take a few seconds and talk with your neighbor and see, do you have any similar things highlighted?
Yeah.
So, yeah, equitable.
Actually have this one more time.
When you feel comfortable, you can grab a piece, but would anybody be willing to share a few things that you might have highlighted? Or a word you highlighted?
Research based.
What else do we have?
I like, sort of equitable opportunities, clarity, common practice and consistency. And then Dr. Sullivan had, sort of like the best practices and then sort of the local control as well as tightly held. Right, so it's, we did have a little bit of difference. Great. I think you have a share, or you did.
Yeah, I think mine were very similar to Tracy's, and I did research-based best practices.
I mean, there's not a ton of words, so asking you guys, it's very similar, right? And I think what our team found when we did this activity, because we had to do a lot of just trying to figure out what does this actually mean for our system and what does this mean for our work that we're gonna do as a team? And this is what we kind of came up with. We highlighted system, consistency, accountability, innovation, and differentiation with a focus on structures, practices, and progress monitoring. So that's kind of what we came up with to synthesize what this initiative is all about. And the graphic here really is about balance, because we can't just have defining our structures and practices and progress monitoring, because we know every building is different. And much like you heard in the last presentation, Amy talked about individualizing for certain students. So we have to have that ability to do that. And so allowing whatever structure to put in place, we have to have that. All right, so we are at like the very beginning of this process. And so as we begin to work on defining essential practices and essential structures, we have to engage our stakeholders. You know, the last thing you want is for me and a team of like 5 people to define a whole bunch of stuff for a bunch of people, because we don't have the experience that we might need to actually do that work. So here you'll see, when we're talking about defining essential structures, practices, and that progress monitoring piece, we want to engage with our teachers, our administrators, and then cabinet level. When we are talking about implementation planning, which is a lot of what you actually heard from Mimi, is that's engaging everybody. Because you have to have your family engagement. You have to have your community pieces in there. You also have to have your support staff, because all of us together make that difference. There's not just one group up here that can make the difference for every student. All right, so brief overview of our, very brief so far, work we've done. The first thing is development of our team. So it's cross-department, and I'll show you a little bit more about that. So last year, Cabinet reviewed or read the book Switch, and we actually have our team review that as well, because our team members don't sit on Cabinet. And so we wanted to talk about those philosophical ideas that Cabinet is taking when they make those decisions and talk about how we can apply them. We also developed a kind of a start off of our scope and sequence of work, which includes the intersections of the different strategic initiatives. So when you heard Mimi, and you kind of see the connections here, that's really intentional, because we meet with Mimi we meet with grading and assessment, we meet with removing barriers, we meet across the board to make sure that the work that we're doing intersects with everybody. And then I will also talk a little bit more about this coming up, but we did a review of our student priority outcomes and how we align our work with those student priority outcomes. And then this is kind of ongoing right now. We're collaborating with regional superintendents, strategic initiative owners, building and department administrators to discuss essential practices and structures. So really helping define those things out. This strategic initiative is all about process. It's a lot about development of templates, a lot about the development of how do we actually do these things. So it's not our team necessarily defining essential practices, but how do we do that? And what is the process in which we're gonna go about doing that? And we can have input on it. But it's not really our small team's work to define all of the essential structures and all these things. So we're gonna develop those templates and then we have to pilot those materials. And you'll see a little bit of that today. So, like I said, our team did this too. And that's what we highlighted as our first step. Our very first meeting was just trying to figure out what are we doing? And I think you can kind of see some similarities to the things that you highlighted as well. As I said before, intentional collaboration. So we have at least monthly, if not every 2-week meeting where all of the owners of these strategic initiatives are meeting together. And we're talking about those intersections and how we can help to support and ensure that when something is going out to a school building or going out to families, that we're all on the same page. And we look at the SIP plans, we look at our action plans, and then we also look at that teacher evaluation framework to make sure that when we're talking, we're talking about things that are really impactful to schools and meaningful to the work that they're currently doing. We've dug a lot into research-based best practice for implementation science, and I think that these things are familiar to you all. You've seen them before. So removing barriers talked a lot about this fishbone analysis, getting to that root cause. So we've been researching, how do we use that? How do we make this more manageable and when we're defining essential practices and structures? And then you've seen this, which is the modified data-wise data circle from the regional superintendents. So we're using that as well as we think through how are we progress monitoring and what are we progress monitoring. Also connecting to previous strategic initiatives. So these are the other 2 initiatives that were in innovation that have already gone forward. And I really want to highlight the loose tight pieces because this is some of the work that our team is doing. Helping to develop processes for developing out what is loose or where you have autonomy and what is tight that we're all doing. And I think that kind of relates back to the questions we had around MTSS. So what are all buildings doing and where are their autonomy or flexibility? And so that's the kind of the process piece that we're doing. We had a lot of fun this day. We made a Padlet, which kind of brings us back to the, online only days. But we dropped a lot of ideas, like what's the things that we're currently doing? What are we all working on right now? Just to kind of get our brains going around all of the different pieces of work that we all do every day. And then we connect it to the priority outcomes. So where does this work that we're doing connect within each priority outcome and why is that important? There's a lot of different things we're doing. And ensuring that connection is clear and coherent is really important.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So did you find that there are things being done that maybe don't need to be done anymore?
We were just, to be honest, we were just really brainstorming, and I don't know about de-implementation necessarily, because these things were really, we were looking at what are our compliance pieces. So what OSPI says we have to do, what's coming up that OSPI says we have to do. And there's not a ton of, extraneous things that we're actually really doing, but a lot of it is like the science of reading work or the word study work, like all of those things are really important, and OSPI says we have to do them. So, but then connecting it back to say, like, are we actually connecting it to these priority outcomes? And how are we doing that? How are we showing that we're doing that? Is it clear? So that was actually just brainstorm work for our team. That's not like something that we're like putting forward and be like, now please go fix all of these problems, people. but it was for us to say, like, we have to be rooted in really thinking about our priority outcomes whenever we're developing templates or processes that we're gonna use. So here's kind of a rough draft structure of the things that we are considering when we're talking about the process of defining essential practices and structures. The very first step is really that definition piece. So what is the essential structure and the essential practice? What is our current state? And I think I heard that in the last presentation, the question. So how is this, what are we currently doing that's different than what we have been doing, right? So like that movement of what's our current state, where do we want to go? Clearly outlining that. Making sure everything we're doing is rooted in whatever RCWs or WACs and board policy and procedure to ensure that we're aligned. Development of tight and loose, and then what is our implementation plan and how are we progress monitoring? So those are kind of the different pieces of the process we're developing. So I'm going to give you an example. And again, this team is really about the process. We did not inform the essential practice or structure that you're going to see here, or the progress monitoring pieces. That was done by the principals and the regional superintendent. But this is just the process. So extended day learning opportunities. We've had extended day learning opportunities forever. I was assistant principal at Gateway for a while. We had study club, we had math after school help, we had a variety of different things. But they were things that we created internally. They weren't something that as a system everyone was doing. So this example is something that a few of our schools are all aligned in doing. Essential practices providing access to instruction through iReady magnetic reading to support student achievement after school. And the structure is outside of that school day. And so we have a handful of schools that are engaging in this process to see how it's going to impact student achievement. Tight and loose. I probably said this a few too many times in this presentation, but to show you just the example of how the team developed this, and that again was the principals and the regional superintendent overseeing these schools. They developed tight practices, tight structures, and progress monitoring. They also provided opportunities for autonomy, or where those buildings are making those decisions. And you'll see that they have practices, structures, and progress monitoring there as well. And this is the initial data. This is the first 10-week cycle just wrapped up. And so as you saw in Amy's presentation, sometimes your duration is 4 weeks, sometimes your duration is 8 weeks. This is a 10-week cycle. And you're seeing here this progress towards stretch goal growth in the schools in which this extended day learning opportunity is happening. And this again is to support reading. So this is all about improving reading achievement for our 3rd through 5th grade students who are below proficiency. This is not every student. This is a specific after-school program. I think we have about 200, let me pull up my form, 239 students who participate across these schools. For progress monitoring for implementation of the program, attendance is kind of a huge piece of that. And so our attendance shows that we had 180 students, about 75% who had regular attendance. Attendance directly correlates to their achievement in the program. And then this graph shows stretch growth. So when you have a student who is significantly below grade level, when you have your traditional growth, it might look incremental. And so iReady has developed this idea of stretch growth, where if students are meeting these specific stretch growth goals, they have a higher chance of getting to their grade level proficiency. And it's also like there's part of it that's making them feel more successful because they're seeing this progress, but it also is, iReady has a bunch of research behind the idea of stretch growth as well. So you're seeing really positive results for our first 10-week cycle. Now, does that mean you just continue the way it is? Not necessarily. Like there still has to be refinement. We're talking about MTSS. How are we selecting students? How are we ensuring that the 25% who aren't attending begin to attend? There are a lot of pieces to dig into there for that second round of the 10-week cycle. So this is just a high level, but this is an example again of a team who used essential structures, practices, and progress monitoring to help develop a program.
question too, just because
Yes.
some of those very high performers, and you see the difference of the kids who aren't in it versus kids who are. Like at Hawthorne and Jackson, just because that proportion, so I'm guessing there are some kids that made it into the grade potentially. Do they then graduate out, allowing maybe space for the others to come in? And so it is kind of like every cycle sort of, could be new kids that continue and new kids that come in.
Exactly, it's exactly what you saw with the MTSS piece, where you are moving kids based on their proficiency. Yeah, yeah, so and this is like, you're thinking of that triangle, right, right, right. And then you're getting the kids that actually get down to the green, out, and new kids in to help support and continue to grow. Yeah. Okay, so this is just another visual. When we have tight across districts and schools and loose to provide that idea of autonomy, that equals student success. And that's what we're kind of seeing with that example from extended day. And as we grow this process, we're going to see more examples of student achievement, but also student progress monitoring for implementation. And this is one that's in progress. We know that our multilingual learners are, as per our student priority outcomes, area of focus for us. And so this is new, but this is the ML team, or the multilingual learner team, developed the essential practice in conjunction with the regional superintendents of utilizing the strategy of pre-teach. And then the structure is ensuring that master block schedules have an opportunity for students who receive multilingual services to get that pre-teach opportunity. So that actually requires quite a few things. One, it requires time in the master schedule, but it requires alignment. So your general ed teachers and your multilingual teachers have to also be aligned. And so thinking about those structures, you have to have those things in place. And so again, this is brand new, but this is the idea. We're defining those essential practices and structures. The regional superintendents are working hard with their building administrators to know where's our readiness to benefit, what are we currently doing. We're ensuring that we're directly using the correct policies and procedures, development of those tight loose, and then again, progress monitoring. So I keep on saying the same thing, but this is just, again, that process. So just ending with this idea. Consistency, accountability, innovation, differentiation, with a focus on structures, practices, and progress monitoring. Gotta have that balance. So here's our next steps. We are currently working on that list of essential practices and structures that are aligned to the student priority outcomes, system-wide thinking on that, developing those tight list parameters, and then developing and piloting those templates. So we've already piloted, or we've already kind of used what the extended day learning opportunities, but where are our other opportunities this year to test it out and see if this is actually going to work, and how can we refine it? Any questions?
Thank you for all this work. This is so excellent, and just I'm continually impressed by the work that this district does, especially compared to other districts. Thank you.
Thank you. It's definitely a team effort.
I have a question. There are so many variables, and student achievement and student success is so complex. I wonder, how do you isolate variables and correlate them with successful initiatives? It's very thought-provoking, and I wonder, how in the world do you say, that's it? That's the thing that wins, and that's what we need to deploy everywhere. With how in the world do you figure out, sorry, I'm just gonna make a nerd right now, but holy smokes.
They're definitely, and I wish, if I had an answer for you, I probably would be like the president for people. But really thinking through, I think as Mimi showed, it's looking at that individual kid, and that's the real challenge, and seeing where are they on track. And this is specific to math, ELA, and science, because that's the assessments that we have at the state level and federal level, to make sure that they're on track and having those, how they are doing in relation to those specific standards, and then meeting them where they are. But yeah, it's like a huge, there's a lot of variables there. Absolutely.
Yes, I have a question. I guess I'm still a little, I apologize, baffled by this. So when I looked at what you're trying, like the extended days, we might have all these initiatives going on. And to your point, where's the impact maybe? And so what I saw is maybe putting some data behind it to see where's the worthwhileness, doing some of what we saw with the PBIs and GSS, short cycle. So what you said, the plan to study act, really study it. Is this effective or is it not effective? And if it is effective, then we keep going or we refine it. If it's not effective, but without that data, without seeing that kid, what the interventions do, without seeing what the assemblies did, without seeing what extended day did, you don't have the data to say that, yes, extended day helps. Because when you look at, and I love Emerson, there's it backwards compared to everybody else. So what's happening at Emerson that's different from all the other schools? Because the data shows something is happening. And just to see what it is, but now there's data about it, again, not just, we gave extended day. Is that sort of what?
Exactly, and it's that progress monitoring piece that's so huge, because it's part of it is the implementation of whatever program, right? Like, we wanna ensure that we have specific things for progress monitoring when we implement a program like extended day. Like, have you hired your teachers? Who do you have? What are the curricular resources you're using? How are you getting students to attend? Do you have transportation for them? Just like the implementation pieces and making sure that those are all in place. But really, it's also that student achievement, because at Gateway, when we had study club, we didn't have data to know that that was a successful, or was it more just kids doing homework?
Like, so I went to MASH every day and struggled.
Yeah, and so having I just think we have so many tools now that we can progress monitor and really intentionally individualize support for kids. It's really great. But it's also our job to figure out how do you best progress monitor, and then how are we having those conversations, right? Like, we talked about that today. So how are we talking about Emerson and refining?
Do you, how will this type of, there are so many different things that even teachers do differently. Is that in some way going to be incorporated into the student information system that allows us to kind of data analyze these differences in kind of knowledge deployment, whether it's, staying after school or not? How do we separate the kids that are doing that from the kids that aren't, and say, that works?
I would look over to Mr. Beckley here about this. I can't speak to that one, or maybe not, sorry. I know, I'm looking at Keith,
I'm here, so absolutely, so the more our systems talk to each other, I think the technical term is interoperability, the better the data systems that we have, the more opportunities we have to identify the needs, but also the strengths. It's a learn from stance. So like with the Emerson, I want to highlight that stretch growth is a high bar. There are students who were stuck, that not reading or making any kind of growth, who are, but are they not yet making that high bar for stretch growth. So we can learn from that example, and we can identify where we saw higher levels of growth, and we can learn from those examples. And then we adjust, we revisit kind of that loose tight frame that we had, and we learn from, and we can get more explicit we have around some of our progress monitoring for attendance specifically. So we're checking that daily, weekly, and we're not waiting. And I'm doing, Kathy and I are doing that with principals, so we can provide that. We're also learning from who are the students that are most likely to benefit from that particular intervention, those particular instructional materials. And we've learned a lot of that through this data set of over 200 students. Just within this is the first time, this is our first round with this model with these new materials. So yes, the tighter the data that we have, the more opportunities we have to learn from that. The data in the end won't tell us exactly what to do. We have to use the data paired with collaborative expertise of a team of teachers, not relying on just an individual to make sense of the data, but that team approach, going back to what Amy was talking about, and collectively informed by data, but also professional experience and knowledge. They can consume it, make some professional judgments, and then make informed decisions. And that's the exciting work. It's why we all are here. It binds us together. We learn from each other. We replicate the strengths as much as we can. To your earlier question, how do you pinpoint? We start with evidence-based research, with high-quality instructional materials, that tier 1, professional learning systems that is integrated and ongoing and job embedded. We do the list goes on. We know more about what to do than we don't, and so, but it is complex. I like your word pinpoint, and it's never as simple as just one thing. But when we do use data, it can give us opportunities to pinpoint paired with a team approach to make really important decisions. Thank you. Kelly stepped away. I see. Any other questions or discussions or comments? Dr. Salson, I see.
Well, great discussion and great questions. And sounds like the board's been our A&S meetings that we have, right? But there is no magic wand. There's no magic wand. Big groups that have to move it, principals, teachers, paraprofessionals, right? We are the tools. Central office, remember, to put this in place, are the tools. Principal in the building, the teacher, the parents help mold this, okay? It's good that we show data all the time because there's some outliers that are doing really well, and some outliers we can improve on, okay? If we inspect what we expect, we'll be able to move it. That's what we have to do our communities. Inspect what we expect. The proof in the pudding is from last year, double-digit gains. The challenge to our system is triple-digit gains. We're realistic too. But I think for the board and for the public to understand tonight is, number one, it's where the people in our building help drive it, and the tools are from the central office. Right, we do have a lot of tools from the central office to get out to our buildings, okay? It is really great work and challenging at the same time when you have to move certain kids at certain times, but what great work when you see the end result, It is clear. I think, looking at an extended day, that is consistent monitoring in the PM. Attendance is the correlation. You come, we get you the tools. You don't come to extended day, that's for our leaders to make sure, why aren't they there? What's the reason? And as a system, putting student achievement first makes everything else happen. Social emotional learning, PBIS. I think even this year, I don't know if we told the board, we have PBIS awards every month. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
Right, I know we forgot to say it. I want you to know we honor that. What great if I'm a leader in my building, a teacher, that I'm getting a huge award for this month of doing the activities. But it's challenging, but I really, really love this kind of workshop because you get to understand how we're moving the system and yet how complicated it is, because there is no magic wand. We wish it was, make our jobs a lot easier and different. But we have the tools in place in the central office. In the buildings is where it happens. And we just have to remember that every day. Because it's not more that's better. It's just that we're inspecting the expectations to happen in the building. And I think that's what we just have to be really clear on that, because our leaders in the building, the leaders that are here tonight do amazing work, you know that every day. But the leaders in the building are the ones that produce the results. Right? Principal, teacher, paraprofessional, everybody works with those kids. That's your results up there. I think we just have to continue doing that. And student achievement just has to continuously be the core. It just has to be the core. And I just love the questions tonight because it really, it's what I live every day and breathe every day. And the people that are here today are helping get those tools out to the schools. So I don't think we get to share enough to our public of what the work is, but it's challenging to get. We're doing it, and literacy is key. When you have literacy, you'll have mathematics and science. It all is producing, and we still have many youngsters that we have to get caught up. Right? It's just the nature of the game that's been going on 100 years before us, 100 years after us, to get every kid to grade level. And I think this strategic plan is, really important. We talk about what stays and what goes. I think if it worked, you keep it, you master it. And what continues is, does when innovation, rubber hits the road with innovation. So I just wanted the public to say that because we don't get to do it enough. You know, with our board as these sessions. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I just wanted to say thank you. I totally understand the complexity of this initiative. It is hard to wrap your head around because it is all encompassing, but what I love about it is it prevents siloing of like the initiatives or the school, the work of the schools or practices, you know, and because what it's doing is it's basically blending it all together where, you have, you know, you have this looseness where it provides innovation and opportunity to serve the students at a particular school, but it also provides structure. And that's really important, that consistency across our district, especially at a board level, to be able to see that where we can utilize best research-based best practices that really work. And we're not forcing them on the school, we're providing opportunities to show them ways to do things. So it's really good work. And I can tell you're an English teacher because you say students where they are, not where they're at. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you both for great presentations.
And just, it was fantastic. And just thrilled when you think about systems learning. And if something's going really well in one school, how do we know when to scale that up to make it system-wide? But this is what it takes, I think, in order to capture those really good ideas that are working. And then if something's not working, what are they doing differently than us? And this is great.
I just want to say thank you so much, and to Dr. Salzman, to your comment about what happens in this building. Sometimes there's a lot of confusion in the community about the great work that's happened in this building. The finance, the HR, but also student learning that's happening in this building. And to hear, that you went out to every school, that you're leaving this building, that it's what is in this building, and your expectations about your school leaders are out in buildings. It is sort of this building is not, great work is happening here really to support the 27 buildings out there. And so I just want to thank everyone in this building for the work you do for the 27, right, out there. So thank you. Anything else? Okay, well, this concludes the business schedule come before the board of directors this evening. The meeting is adjourned.